David, enthused by the Next Gen ATP Finals?
Well, they've just reached the semi-finals stage, haven't they? It's Borna Coric against Andrei Rublev and Hyun Chung against Daniil Medvedev in tonight's semi-finals as we talk to you on Friday afternoon. You're asking me about the setup and the feel and all those rule changes that they've employed.
Look, I'm going to go through the rule changes one by one, and we're going to discuss our assessment of those. So what I'm asking for preliminarily, David, is your more general assessment of the hashtag NextGen ATP Finals.
I've only really watched
draw ceremony aside
a couple of matches properly. I watched one last night. A proper five-setter where Borna Coric came from behind to beat Karen Khachanov. And it was my first real opportunity to sit down and just watch it properly. And I thought there was a lot I enjoyed about it. I thought that the atmosphere seemed a bit flat, flatter than I expected in a way. I think part of that is, it's a new event. It wasn't a completely packed house. And I do think that there is still this inevitable confusion with the rules. And plus these are not household names. It's difficult for people to really dial in perhaps quite the same way. But I think the venture is an excellent one. I think it's the right thing to do that the ATP has done to stage this event, and for all the reasons that they've staged it, I like the idea of it. And I have varying views on all the rule changes. What did you think? You've been watching it all week.
Yeah, I've done a couple of days of commentary for ATP Radio. I've probably watched a little bit more than you, but I don't think it takes too long to sort of get a feel of what it's all about. My feeling is the same. It's not a perfect event. I'm glad it exists, is the bottom line. I'm glad they've done it. I'm glad it exists. I think it's been, by and large, enough of a success that they'll look to do it again. Obviously, it's come about as a result of having this sort of exciting, easily marketable crop of young players, and that won't necessarily be the case it'll probably be okay in a year's time. Shapovalov's only 18, but whether that will be the case in 2 or 3 years' time, I don't know. But I'm glad it exists. In general, my feelings are a lot more positive about the non-scoring based changes than they are about I'm not keen on the scoring that they're adopting, but there are lots of other aspects of the experimental features that they're trying that I am a huge fan of. Should we go through them, David?
Yes, we should, and if you don't mind, I'll just insert the pole vault results for each one of them as we go along, because I
very much do mind, but I can only assume you'll do it in as seamless and inoffensive way as is possible.
I'm going to try not to annoy you.
Right then, no service lets. What do we think, David?
Yeah, I would probably do that. I think I said last week that I think that it's sensible to get rid of lets on serve. I don't think in the match that I saw that there were any, so it was slightly difficult for me to judge. I mean, that's one of those that split the reaction. 48% like it, 52% don't. There's been about 700 votes for each one of these, but what do you think?
I think it's one of the ones that people feel less strongly about, whichever side of the argument you come down on. It's not going to fundamentally change the complexion of tennis either way, is it? I just about come down on the side of yes, do it, but I don't feel particularly strongly about it, and I do think it's going to take quite a long process of adjustment. I've seen a few of them in the matches that I've commentated, and there definitely is a split second where the players have to remind themselves that the point is in play and it's not going to be another first serve. So I think that one could take a bit of an adjustment process, but on balance, probably, yeah.
By the way, I have to say, though, I do feel that if a match came down to a let cord ace on, to win a title, I'm not sure that would feel particularly satisfactory.
But did it feel satisfactory when Hawkeye stomped all over the winning moments of Federer and Muguruza, the Australian and Wimbledon Open. Well, it's not the
No, but
Wimbledon
at least
Open.
it's not
that
blind luck
work.
that's intervening, is it?
But you could still have a tournament decided by a net cord. You could have a shot dribble over on the net cord. So why is it different to it happening on the serve?
Well, only in that it's a single shot, but effectively,
right.
I
think that's a distinction that's bigger in your head than it is in reality, David.
Okay, all right. Well, I don't have a massive objection to it, so I'll allow it.
Oh, okay. Right then, first to 4 games over best of 5. Can I go first? Because I hate it.
You just have.
Yeah. I really don't like it at all. That's
Why?
my least favourite of it. Actually, no, my least favourite is the sudden death deuce. I see exactly what they've tried to do, and I think the upsides of it have come off, but I just think the downsides are so huge. First and foremost, I think that particular rule scoring format is largely responsible for the flat atmosphere. I don't think people know that it was kind of engineered to create a feeling of, every point counts, every game counts. There's no sort of lull in the middle of a game. But actually, I think the cadence of tennis, there's something really beautiful about it. The way that there could be a few games in the middle of a set in a particularly competitive match where you just know it's going to go with serve, and you're building and building and building towards the inevitable and hugely anticipated climax, and you don't get that here. I don't think people know sort of when to get excited and when to build anticipation and when not to. I think it could be a case of people need to adjust and get used to it, but for me it just I love the building. I just think tennis scoring is a thing of absolute beauty, and the upsides don't justify messing with it for me.
Yeah, I do think that there is a possibility, as you alluded to there, that the fact that we're just not used to it, that it feels weird. But at the same time, I ultimately share your view. I actually thought it was a perfect illustration of it working quite well last night when Coric was 2-0 down and came back and won in 5 of those things. But and I spoke to Stephen Farrow, the Queen's tournament director, who was over there for the day to sample it, and he liked the fact that he felt that immediately points matter in each set, which I also take that point. He felt that it was energized in that way. Personally, I would probably prefer to do two full sets and a champions tiebreak if you're going to go for a shortened version of the sports in that way. I didn't particularly like that staccato feel.
Shall I move on without a pole vault, or would you like to tell me?
Oh yeah, just very quickly to back up your view. 89% don't like it. Only 11% do.
I'm glad I asked. Right then, wow, that's about as high as a pole vault gets, isn't it?
There's a couple like that.
That's about as much of a landslide. So no ad games then, is that as much of a landslide? Because I really don't like it.
88% don't like that either. And look, we talked about it last week and said we don't like the idea of it, and I still feel the same.
Yeah, precisely. I think that's one of the few actually where I feel exactly the way I expected to feel about it. And my feelings haven't changed. So see previous podcast for Whittaker and Law assessment of no ad games. Headset coaching, David.
I loved it. I mean, and I so didn't expect to feel like that. I mean, I thought it would be good. No, I thought, as you know, I've liked on-court coaching in the past, but I liked this a lot more. And there's a couple of reasons why. One is, I mean, I think it doesn't feel quite right what they're doing, saying to coaches, you know, we want you to speak in English. That feels slightly one-eyed and Little Englander, or you know, totally dominated by the Western world. But at the same time, it did make for a compelling television experience in that regard. I still would prefer a subtitle system so that people can do what they want, and be understood by us as viewers. But what I loved about it, and maybe it was just this example of a match that I saw last night with Coric and Khachanov, the fact that they weren't in the players' faces, kneeling in front of them, meant that you got a conversation that you wouldn't necessarily get, in my opinion. I think you work harder when you're on the telephone a lot of the time than you do when you're in front of somebody. Body language is not as instructive in terms of tactics, etc. And it's too easy to sulk in front of somebody's face. When Coric was having a chat with his coach and when Khachanov had a chat with his coach, you got proper analysis, proper strategizing. I mean, you got some silliness the other day with Shapovalov and his coach talking about the price of coffee in Milan, which it's quite funny. But I just feel like you are getting added extra with this system, and I absolutely loved headset coaching, and I think that they should just bring it in immediately.
Yeah, I think it is absolutely essential if it is to be implemented on a wider scale, which it absolutely should be. We've decided, David, and our instructions should be heeded. I think it is essential that translation be made available. I don't think it's okay to make an Italian player and coach speak in English. I share your discomfort with that. Equally, as a broadcaster, I was pleased because it provided such an insight. But I think in principle that's not really okay. But it being via headset rather than with the coach physically on the court and it having to be picked up by sort of weird radio mics that they've got tucked into their jogging bottoms, it makes translation a lot more possible and feasible in a seamless way. So I think that's important. But look, I loved it. The exchange between Shapovalov and Laurendeau, his coach, yesterday, I loved that. My brother texted me at the time and said that exchange just in itself had single-handedly converted him to headset coaching, and he was very much opposed before that. He did then revert back to his previous feelings, but he said he thought there was an added layer of interest with the young players because there is psychological work in progress, and I thought that was an interesting spin on it. It is.
I have to say that the Shapovalov bit was probably the bit that I preferred it when it was real. I mean, although it showed a good side of his personality, I mean, they were fooling around. And
hang on, it was real though. It was real. It wasn't like, I don't know if you heard, Zverev flew in and did some waving on Tuesday and played an exhibition match with Stefanos Tsitsipas to show his support for the Next Gen Finals. And he put the headset on and he had Marcelo Melo there as his quote unquote coach. And that really was a taking the pee exchange, and I found that a bit annoying. But I think the one between Shapovalov and Laurendeau yesterday, they'd done the technical chat, and then he was trying to keep him loose. He was trying to keep him
interesting.
Loose,
which I always say about Kyrgios, don't I?
Because the advice was, it was really refreshing actually. The advice he said, this is a great match. What he said, this is the match of the tournament so far. Enjoy, you love competing. Enjoy the contest. Enjoy playing tennis like this. And so I think that relaxed chit chat was part of it.
Yeah, I missed that bit. One bit I liked was when Khachanov was struggling and it went 2 sets all, and Galo Blanco just said, "You're tired, aren't you?" And he said, "Yeah, I am." And it was just such an insight into what he was going through, and then the attempts to try to energise him. And I did think, good on you, Galo Blanco. I mean, he speaks decent English anyway. But
well, hang on. Did you see? Sorry to interrupt, David, but did you see the exchange between Khachanov and Galo Blanco on day one when Khachanov was playing his good friend Daniil Medvedev?
No.
When Galo Blanco was just basically throwing massive shade on Medvedev. He was saying, you can't lose to this guy. He's rubbish, basically.
Wow.
He was saying, cool. you're look at him. You are such a better, more complete player than him. You shouldn't be losing to him. It was fascinating, absolutely fascinating. You know, Jan-Michael Gamble had no headset discussion with poor Jared Donaldson, who looked like he was overwhelmed by the whole occasion. Frankly, I felt really sorry for him throughout the week. Really didn't look like he could relax and enjoy it at all. But Jan-Michael Gamble had said very clearly he doesn't believe in it. He believes in the problem-solving element of coaching. And as far as he's concerned, Jared is out there on his own. And I sort of felt like he was at a bit of a disadvantage because of that. I felt like, you know, some encouraging words from Jan-Michael Gamble might not have gone amiss at certain stages. Well, but then that's a tactic in itself, you know, whether or not they choose to use it.
Maybe in a short-term situation, well, it certainly probably did do him a disadvantage, but I suppose the view is that when you get to the Australian Open, you don't have that. So, you know, until they do, then it's almost self-defeating.
And Jared Donaldson, as we discussed last week, is all about the long term, isn't he? He's such a level-headed. He's about the slow and steady progress to reach his goals. So as much as I felt for him this week.
The pole vault view on headset coaching was that 49% like it and 51% don't. So, you know, that's not bad. It started off with many more liking it than not, but anyway, I'm sold.
I'm sold as well. I'll choose to ignore that pole vault. The other issue with it is that although it's great for us commentators and reporters, it might not be so great for broadcasters because you can't take your eyes off it. To go to an ad break when there's coaching happening is doing a complete disservice to your viewer. But then when do you stick the ad breaks in?
Well, you've got to turn it around, haven't you? You've got to play the
I know
best of
that's
the
what they
bits.
do on the WTA, but I don't know. I would feel annoyed if I were watching tennis and I saw Denis Shapovalov reach for the headset and then it cut to an ad break. That would annoy me.
Right,
anyway.
Well, sorry, ad breaks. You can't come on because Catherine wants to hear the chat.
Yeah, on-court shot clock.
Well, I mean, it's just a no-brainer, isn't it? Why would you not do that? It's 25 seconds. It shows everybody in the whole place how long the players have got. The players don't then abuse it. The umpire can't let them off and has got every reason to show the player why they've got to crack on. I mean, there's just no reason not to do it. And 75% of our pole vault voters agree with us. So
it's an absolute no-brainer. This isn't even a rule change. It's just actual consistent implementation of an existing rule.
It's going to happen. The Times has reported today that the slams are meeting and that'll be on the agenda, as will
headset coaching.
Well, I think certainly an on-court coaching discussion is going to be had. I think that and I think that they may well resolve to have different systems at each tournament. You know, I don't necessarily think Wimbledon will do on-court coaching or headset coaching, but maybe the US Open will.
It's funny, you know, that Chris Commode, CEO of the ATP, has been very open with his dislike in principle of on-court coaching, and he openly said he was hoping that particular innovation was one of the ones that people were less keen on. So he's potentially facing a quandary now.
But that's another reason why he does a good job at this sort of thing, because he just throws it open, he puts on an event and he says, right, well, let's try it all out. My view is I don't like it, but let's find out what everybody else's view is.
The tennis podcast view is that they do, so we'll do it. Hawkeye for all lines, David.
Yeah, I mean, that was absolutely 50-50 in the votes. 744 people. I mean, you can still vote, by the way. There's about another 10 hours to go. But I thought it worked well in the match that I saw. I just don't like not having human beings on the court in the way I'm used to. And maybe it's just me being an old stick in the mud. I don't like not having those people out there, and I also think that it's important for bringing through the next era and generation of chair umpires that they come from line judges. I'd rather they kept it as it is.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel as strongly about it as I thought I might. It's certainly, in terms of the technology, it worked seamlessly from what I could tell. I was very impressed with the implementation of it. On balance, I would rather have line judges. I like seeing the human beings. I felt it was a little bit soulless. However, I suddenly realised the possibility for, the voice. I hadn't realised that there would be sort of one voice. Can you imagine if, like, you could get Ian McKellen to record the call of out and fault in the voice of Gandalf? You could have Gandalf the Grey calling lines. Or like you could get Brian Blessed, who we know will do an answer machine message for £1,000. So
as will the tennis podcast.
Yeah. So I suddenly realised those possibilities. Yeah, I mean, I'm being silly.
Yeah, but why would you do it when you've got Kaida Nooney just on tap?
Because it's Gandalf the Grey, David.
Yeah, but it's Kaida Nooney.
No.
He's got the greatest voice in the world.
Gandalf the Grey. Each match starting 5 minutes after players come onto court.
I like it, personally. Just get rid of the faff. 71% think it's just the right amount. 11% think it should be less. 18% think it should be more. I think just about right. What do you think?
I think reducing it is a good thing. I think it's a fudge. I think either you have a warm-up or you don't. I think the tennis warm-up is a total oddity and I would scrap it tomorrow. But yeah, the less faffing, the better. So reducing it a bit is solving part of the problem for me.
Okay. Well, yeah, effectively, I agree with you. I'd need to watch more of these matches. I also need to watch them back to back. A couple of people did point out that I suppose it depends if you have a built-in period between matches, because people do need time to go and go to the bathroom, etc. But maybe you just build in a little bit of time between matches. Having them out there and that big build-up and then nothing for 5-10 minutes is a bit frustrating. But anyway.
Finally, fans moving around and talking during play, which I don't actually... maybe it felt different in the stadium, but I didn't feel like the evidence of that was particularly... If you didn't know that was a rule being implemented, I don't think that you would have been aware of it. No,
I think mainly tennis crowds, their default position is not to talk all the time during points. I think that they might not have been being told to be quiet, please, but I think that people, yeah, they want to watch the tennis most of the time. So yeah, I didn't even notice that was a rule really, unless I'd known about it beforehand.
So on balance, David, I think we're broadly more pro than against, but our feelings about the rule changes that have been thrown at the wall are nuanced.
Yeah, which I think I'd have expected them to be, and yeah. Mostly the only one that's really caused me a surprise is the headset one. I thought I would think it was good, but I didn't think I'd care any more than on-court coaching, and I do.
Yeah, I can't tell you how much I care about headset coaching. It's my new thing.